All right, here we go, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Primal Edge Health Stream. Talking about eating meat and making families. Got one of the favorites here on the show. My buddy Derek Nance is joining us today. But first, we got a couple of announcements. This podcast, this stream is brought to you in part by Ancestral Supplements, putting back what the modern world has left out. Ancestral Supplements offers grass-fed, grass-finished bone marrow, nose-to-tail organ meats like liver, heart, kidney, pancreas, brain, and more in simple, convenient gelatin capsules. For all you normies out there who aren't going to go full steam ahead like guys like Derek Nance here, who's butchering his own animals and eating them nose to tail. I know it can be difficult to get some of these organs in. A lot of people are becoming interested in nose to tail eating as the message about the importance of animal foods is spreading. And so we really like Ancestral Supplements. That's why we actually even included them and threw a little shout out to them in the Carnivore Cookbook, which is based on all animal foods, 100% animal foods. You can find that at Primal Edge Health, and you can get Ancestral Supplements, liver, heart, kidney, pancreas, brain, bone marrow, and more in convenient, simple gelatin capsules at ancestralsupplements.com. Now that that's out of the way, we're ready to get rolling. I got my buddy Derek Nance here. He's been making waves online. He was just recently featured on a pretty big YouTube channel. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about his video on Barcroft TV. You can find that over at the Barcroft TV channel. It's got 185,000 views. The video is called Raw Meat is All I Eat. Derek Nance has been doing this for quite a long time, and I'm honored to have him on the show again. Derek, sorry for the long introduction, my friend. How's it going?
Good to be here.
All
Yeah,
right.
thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's always an honor having you. I think we were just talking about some of your recent media work. I mean, you've been somebody that's kind of been at the forefront of this whole carnivorous diet movement since before it was even called a carnivore diet. I mean, you were doing it back when it was, I don't know, what was it, zero carb back when you started in 2010 or so?
Zero carb, low carb, keto, and paleo. There's all these evolutions that have taken place over the last decade.
Yeah.
And at the very beginning, I was telling people that it's just a matter of time before this reaches a wider audience. And I was laughed at in a lot of forums, and people were like chuckling, this would never reach the mainstream to where it has today. And I was just waiting, waiting for the right opportunities. And I've had some good luck so far as getting the message out through some of these alternative media outlets.
Yeah, I mean, you were featured in, what was the first media thing that you did? Was it Vice?
Yeah, it was Vice. Before Vice, there was a couple of uh, pilot episodes that I did for the Discovery Channel and Animal Planet. They found me on one of these raw forums, and I don't even know if they did anything with it. But there's extreme animal obsessions, and they wanted to, have somebody more like Freaky Eaters or My Strange Addiction, these types
Okay.
of shows.
Yeah.
But it never went anywhere because of what I was saying was so anti corporate establishment that I don't even think I was fit for the Fear Factor or Freaky Eaters or any of this.
You freaked out the
It
normies too much.
is too much for them back then, but
Yeah.
maybe, times are changing. But then the Vice article came out. A friend of my girlfriend's was doing a couch surfing, and one of these Vice reporters was traveling across the country just looking for stories couch surfing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what Vice was back then. I thought it was some dude's blog, and he might have had a reporter or two, just running because they're couch surfing for free. I
What
thought
year
they
was
were
that?
just like, this was back in 2013, 14,
So
somewhere
Vice was
around there.
smaller back then, though, right? That was before they got that HBO deal, and
Before
before
they saw, yeah, when
before
they
they got
were
like
just
$200 million from George Soros. Um, yeah.
yeah, they were totally wild, wild west of reporting, and there was no limits, and they went anywhere and did anything. So I got in just right at that time, and I didn't know anything about it. And then apparently it went viral, got a few million views, and then next thing you know, there's German documentary, crews coming over, and people from England and overseas were just really, really interested, and not so much with the local media then. And then, so it went viral overseas, and I got a little bit of attention for it back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, when did you actually start doing this raw meat diet? 'Cause I threw in the title there, 10-year raw carnivore, Derek Nance, and 10 years eating raw meat. So that would be
I'll
like
be
2009 or 2010 that you started.
Yeah, right between 2009 and 10. That's where my girlfriend was pregnant with my third child,
Yeah.
and I just remember somewhere over that period of time, I transitioned. I was doing low carb, Weston Price type diet. I had some hunters that were bringing me, fresh deer carcasses, and I was trying to eat, really low carb, mostly meat, rare seared meats.
Yeah.
And then sometime around that winter, I transitioned fully into a completely raw, and I've never went back.
And when you transitioned into completely raw, was that still on a lot of wild game meat? Because I know game can be pretty lean, right? Like, and there's not
Uh,
that much fat on a deer.
Yeah, that was the big problem at first, is just finding enough fat. So when I transitioned from a deer, and I had a couple of milking goats,
Nice.
and I butchered those, and I got a little bit of fat out of it, and that tided me over for the first 2 months of my raw transition.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I had to start seeking out sources, and I found a Mediterranean restaurant where the guy was a butcher, and he butchered sheep, and they made the big shawarma, roasted
Yeah.
shawarma.
Oh, I love that.
That
It's so aesthetically nice, but it doesn't ever taste as good as it looks, does it?
But they have the fat that's on top of it, that they use the fat drippings to melt as it cooks.
Yep.
So he had extra fat at the restaurant, and I would go by, and he would just throw me extra sheep fat. And at the time before they got real busy, he would give me whole chunks. I'd buy whole chuck eye
Yeah.
rolls from him,
Yeah.
and really fatty cuts. And some of this meat was, I can't find it anymore, but it was almost purple. It was so rich.
Oh
And
wow.
but the very beginning of this diet, I had the golden source, and it was just so amazing. And I was gaining weight and
Yeah.
strength and energy, and I was just all for it from the very beginning.
So have you not been? It sounds like you kind of have. You're kind of craving that purple meat again, man. You've been chasing the dragon ever since then, trying to recreate that first sheep.
Yeah, see, what happened was his source upped their price, and then they quit getting it from the same place.
Ah.
And since then, it has been, just the dark times.
The dark ages.
I remember, just imagine you have your stash, and then it runs out, and then you got to go get your fix.
Yeah.
I mean, once you get hooked on that fat,
Yeah.
you got to have it.
And it's really the best fat. It's so people don't understand that. First of all, animal fat is an amazing source of nutrition. That it's an amazing fuel, and that a lot of people don't even understand that the body can burn fat as a fuel. Right? They think that we need constant influx of carbohydrate, but then they start getting into low carb diet. They start focusing on things like coconut oil, right, or olive oil, and they're not looking at they're not looking for sheep fat. They're not looking for where can I get some damn good suet, and that's why I love talking to guys like you who've been doing this for a long time, because it seems like there is a trend of people doing low carb diets for long periods of time, almost always inevitably lean towards a carnivorous approach, and they start craving those animal foods over anything. So you mentioned when you'd been doing a kind of a keto diet before, transitioned into low carb animal food based diet, and you said you had a couple of milking goats that you were getting milk from, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you
Yeah.
drinking the milk? Why'd you get rid of the milk from the diet, or do you still do milk?
Well, I'm on the fence about milk, and I've always been on the fence. I was doing a little bit of milk at the very beginning, and I was also giving it for my kids. They were being weaned,
Yeah.
from nursing. I thought that raw goat's milk would be a good, transition. But I was drinking maybe a cup or so of milk a day throughout, my early transition.
Yeah.
And I was also a little bit of cheese. I'd get some raw cheese and coconut butter, and getting some coconut fat. So I was during the transitional phase where I couldn't get a lot of animal fats, I would rely on some of these other sources, and even stuff like milk for small amounts of carbs.
Yeah, very
And
small amount of carbs, right? Because if that's 1 cup, I'm just kind of thinking if I were to do 1 cup of milk, it's not even a liter. It's like quarter of a liter. That would be
yeah,
maybe 5-6 grams of carbohydrate or something, right? Like it's not that much, or no, maybe like 10 grams of carbs. Not that much carbs, but maybe enough to kind of make you dance on the outskirts of ketosis rather than really burning fat.
Yeah, it's keeps you on that edge, and I would tell when I went over it, if I drank too much, my fat digestion wouldn't be
Mm.
as optimal, and I would have energy issues. So there was a certain line that I had to draw. Uh, Besides that, the carbs and no carbs, it's just something to do with the lactose and the caseins in the milk. If I drink too much for too long, I get mucusy in my gut, and it
Hmm.
just kind of throws things off.
So you
And I
noticed that
just have
the dairy was maybe a little bit detrimental, and you kind of slowly transitioned away from that and said, "It's screw these milk goats. I want the meat."
Yeah. Yeah, and it seemed to work very well. Like after I got rid of the milk, some of those digestive issues went away completely, and then I just transitioned into finding, okay, well, off of the milk, more than just the carbs, I think it's the electrolytes, the minerals, and all that stuff that you get in the milk.
Mm.
You really begin to miss it, and your body will become depleted in mineral salts and electrolytes because
Mm-hmm.
we sweat heavily, and I work hard, and I sweat and sweat. So I had to
Yeah.
find other ways of getting those minerals into my diet, and that's where eating all the organ meats and
Mm-hmm.
cracking open the bones and the marrow, and just trying to eat everything off of that
Oh,
animal.
you chew on the bones sometimes too, right?
Yeah, and the connective tissue, I'll chew it down and just try to eat every single bit of it that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even that explorer, Stephenson, is that
Yeah.
his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he remember they used to cook all the meat, but they would boil it in the pot and they'd drink the water, to get all the
Yes.
meat off of it. So I think a lot of people who transition too quickly into this and they're eating all cooked meats where all the fluids and is just dripping off into the bottom of the frying pan, they're not getting everything out of that animal.
Yeah.
So, like, for me to feel optimal, I feel like I have to get everything out of the animal, and just the best way for me to do it is raw.
And
So it's
grilling seems like the worst. I mean, to me, I see these people throwing these big old beautiful ribeye steaks on a grill, and I'm just like, where's all that fat dropping into? You're burning that fat into oblivion. I mean, I'll cook a steak, but what I'll do is I'll sear one side of it, just one side to get a little bit of a crust. The other side barely touches the pan. The inside's still cold, and yeah, but it really it freaks me out, man. These people dripping all their good fat all over the floor and all over their barbecue. They're just leaving all the good stuff behind.
it could start a new trend, bloody side up. you know,
There
to
you
sear
go.
the warm just enough to melt and warm it and give it a little bit of that
I just
melty
yeah,
flavor.
I like that the crust could be nice, but just on one side because if you do both sides, the inside gets cooked, right? But if you pull the steak out of the fridge right before, you just one side gets a little bit of a crust, other side stays pretty raw, and the inside's cold. So I don't know. I can't. I like
That's
a
not
raw steak, but I like that. I like the cooked a little bit with it too. Did you experiment with that? Like, did you mess around a little bit with, the ratio of cooked meat to raw meat, or did you just kind of think, you know what, I feel better when I'm eating the raw meat. I don't really need to cook it anymore, and just go all in.
yeah. Something happened, a taste change happened, somewhere in the first month or so, where I was heavy into ketosis, and once I quit cooking, my taste changed, and within like a month or two of just eating totally raw, if I were to even taste a little bit of cooked meat, it just tastes burnt.
Yeah,
I could taste the proteins just taste kind of burnt, like something charred or something. I just
yeah.
didn't like it. So, and then it was an aversion, and then if I noticed when I would eat, every now and then I would try to eat, some seared or grilled stuff. It just sat a little heavier in my stomach. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on that, man. I had a steak like a couple weeks ago. This is the only steak in the last, I don't know, 6 months that I've been eating it and just thought I just want to give this to the dogs. Because it was cooked too much. Like it was still rare. It was really rare, but it wasn't raw in the middle like I like it. And it was yeah, I didn't feel satiated afterwards. It didn't feel like it was enough. I almost made another steak, but I just said, okay, screw it. I'm fine. I finished the steak. I'll wait till tomorrow. Um, but yeah, what about like things like sous vide? A lot of people are getting into the sous vide thing. What do you think about that fad?
What's that?
It's they put like you're gonna puke in your mouth right now. They put steaks in like a plastic bag, and it's this weird. I don't know. You basically hot water surrounding this plastic bag heats up really slowly in a plastic bag. It's a weird phenomenon. I'm not too into it. A couple of people in the chat like sous vide, but yeah.
Roasting in the juices so that you have
It's in
everything.
the juices. Someone says it's not plastic, it's silicone. So yeah, to me, it's still doesn't sound too appetizing. I haven't really tried it though, so I can't bash it. It's just the thought of putting it in a pouch seems kind of strange to me.
Well, they say the silicone's biologically inert and it doesn't leach out, so
I hope
it
so.
might be it's probably the safest way to do something like that. So,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't try it.
Well, yeah, you don't even have any. You ever eat cooked meat? Like you ever
I,
find yourself out at a meal and you order a steak, tell them bring it extra rare, or do you just kind of wait till you can get your own meat?
I'll wait till I can get my own. There's some of these sushi bar restaurants that'll cut up some, Kobe beef into like thin strips and
Nice.
make it part of the sashimi,
Yeah.
and like or like a lightly marinated. I mean, completely raw or almost like barely just seared, like just thrown on for a second.
Yeah.
And so I can places that will do that for me, and it's all right.
That's cool. So
But
you're not too much of a pain in the butt to go out to eat with.
no, and yeah, I used to order side salads and stuff, but then all that stuff just I don't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
Just to be sociable, just to try to eat something. But
So
yeah,
every
I
once in a
don't go out.
while, you can handle it well, like the salads and stuff. It's not like it was oh, I can't eat this at all, or I'm gonna be on the toilet 20 times a day. Some people get to that point, and that's why they come to a carnivorous diet, right? Just total gut destruction. But can you handle things now pretty well?
I can. I just prefer not to. Like I try to run off of instinct. And every now and then I was getting cravings for some salad greens, mixed herbs and tomatoes and just a few things, small portion. And but then I noticed if I ate it, and it would just be like once or twice a week. But if I ate it like more than that, I could feel a change in my gut biome, and it's
Hmm.
just not conducive for carnivory
Yeah.
and
Eh,
the
So
So, I like it for the novelty, and I like trying different things. Like I'm growing different roots in my backyard, and my girlfriend's been like pickling burdock and stuff like that. And
ooh,
I
ooh.
think a little bit of that's real, nice, just something to chew on, just
Yeah.
nuances, different flavors.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
not with some people they get to the point. I mean, you see some people in on the internet. Everybody likes to take things to extremes. Everybody's branding their little diet and whatnot. But you're not looking at plants as the devil, totally toxic. Stay away from them at all costs. It sounds like you use some medicinal herbs and stuff in your life too.
yeah. And I think there's a place for it. I think, I mean, if you ever chewed on a piece of ginseng root or, sassafras, some of these roots have, you know, qualities to them. They'll
Yeah,
boost your mood. They'll make you feel good for a few hours. But it's just like anything, you can abuse it.
yeah,
And so foods as I medicine, and even dairy. Like every now and then, I will go on a milk binge.
yeah.
I mean,
Gain
it's
some
rare,
weight,
but
put some weight on real quick.
and I'm telling you, it's like nothing else. Like if I just get a couple gallons of milk and drink it over the course of a week or two, I will gain weight and I'll have energy just out
Yeah.
just evil energy. It's just after a certain threshold, my gut just can't handle it. So like,
Okay. So
but
there's a certain point where it's beneficial and then it just kind of becomes overdue. I guess fat can be like that too, right? Like if you eat a meal and you force too much fat in, right? If you sit down for a meal and it's just you're so hungry, it's been, a day and a half since you've eaten because you haven't had time or whatever, you sit down for that meal, sometimes you could eat too much fat and the digestion goes off too. So I think that's a good point.
no, yeah, too much of anything, and everybody has their own threshold. That's why we can't just dictate. We can't just stand here and say you need that much and you need that much, and it just doesn't work that way because everybody has their personal threshold. And a fat's the good thing about too much fat. It usually just passes through
Yeah.
undigested. Every now and then I'll eat way too much to it, and what? But then I will lose my appetite, and then I won't even need to eat anything for even a whole day or something. If I eat too much, get a little too bloated, you don't have to eat regular meals at regular times. You can let
Yeah.
your body, tell you when and how much, and learn to tune into your senses. I think that that's one thing we've all lost, our ability to tune into our own senses that
Yeah.
evolved over millions of years.
People definitely have, intuitive eating. It's kind of a catchword that people use for this, but I think a lot of people misuse that phrase as well, right? Because I think most of our, you grow up in like standard American lifestyle. Your intuition around food is usually just like it's like a junkie's intuition, right? It's like, oh, I need some sugar. I'm feeling a little bit depressed right now. Like, let me get a little bump of sugar. Let me get a little candy. We listen to our bodies. Sometimes the body tells us the wrong thing, but somebody like you who's refined the diet, who understands what their body needs, you can really effectively, intuitively eat, and that's kind of what leads you to optimal health, right? Just understanding the signals and listening to what your dang body needs.
Yeah, and I think that every now and then, like this dairy craving, dairy can be purifying, and it can actually help cleanse the body, and the minerals it provides, I think, can help chelate a lot of negative stuff out of us. And the mucus that it creates in the gut, it can be cleansing, from time to time. But, following my cravings, I've been able to use it in a way that, is beneficial, and without, going too far into it to where you're just like, a lot of people force dairy and they call it this perpetual detox that never ends.
Yeah,
And oh, that's just detox. But okay, you've been detoxing for years, right?
yeah,
So
it's like the raw vegan thing, It's like they're forcing all
de-
these raw plants into their bodies that they can't digest, and everything's just detox. But you detox all your teeth out, and then what are you gonna chew it with?
yeah, there's a certain point, yeah, where you just have to stop and say enough's enough. I need to build. I need to nourish. Enough of this detox stuff.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you're using the microphone on the phone, right?
Yes.
Is there a way you could pull a little bit closer? Just I'm trying to get our audio level. Somebody said that your audio was a little bit lower. Sorry to the audience. I hope the audio is good now. I turned myself down, and we're trying to get Derek a little bit louder here. Um, but yeah,
All
man.
right.
So what about the rotten meat? Like not only have you kind of been on the forefront of experimenting with yourself and getting coming to the point where you found that you digest raw meat much better and going on essentially an all raw animal food diet. How did you get into the fermentation of meats? I mean, this is something we talked about. This you and I did a whole episode on this. One of my favorite streams we've done. We talked about high meat, and then I've actually got some right here. Here's some brisket that is from March 3rd, so it's just a few months old, but this one's got a nice ferment. What's funny is I have another brisket from the same day, from the same animal, that I put in a different jar, and it's darker and it doesn't have that creamy color. So it's so funny. It's such an amazing thing to me. But let's talk about your origins, how you originally started. I could smell it coming through the jar right now too. Um, how did you get into the fermentation of meat, the intentional putrefaction of meat, and storing meat in jars, as a lot of people call it, high meat? Stephenson calls it that in his book, The Fat of the Land. How did you hear about this? And yeah, what are the origins of this in your life?
Well, studying the paleo diet, you come across these characters like Agenus von der Planitz,
Yeah.
and I guess his Ripley's Believe It or Not video proved it to me that it was safe, just to see somebody eating jars of meat that's been putrefied for over a year. And he seemed healthy, he seemed vibrant, and he seemed like he was onto something. So I mean, I saw his example, and then a lot of the other people in the early forums were talking about it, and seemed to have good results with it. So I started experimenting with it real early into the diet, about 9 years ago. And I was aging a lamb, so I started butchering my own sheep, and I had a little cooler and jars of the sheep meat. And like one of the first two batches I made, something was in it, and I just turned something on inside my brain that, oh yeah, this is what I need. And it coincided with the same time I was transitioning into almost primarily carnivorous diet, and it seemed to boost my digestion to where I could eat 2 pounds of meat a day without any digestive issues at all. Where when I was eating a bunch of plants and other food, I always had something going on, a little bloating, a little gas.
Yeah.
So like it seemed to fit. And I think a lot of people are just afraid of it because of what we've been taught about bacteria, and we've been deceived, and some of that deception is warranted because people, 100, 200 years ago, we're talking about the cholera days, where people were living in their own filth, and these filthy, septic conditions was breeding disease, but they just equate any type of putrefaction, any type of rottenness with disease, when in fact there's many different stipulations. People living in their own filth is one thing, and dry aging meat or aging a purely pristine animal that hasn't had any contact with any other type of contaminant is a completely different thing. And we just conflate, these two, disease and the infections with aging, bacteria, probiotics, and a lot of people just are so desensitized that they can't even tell the difference. They just turn their nose up at anything that
Yeah.
smells bacterial.
Right. Anything that doesn't smell like Tide laundry detergent, people think is unclean.
Right. And even our skin, we feed bacteria on our skin to produce, and they produce vitamin D, they produce pheromones,
Hmm.
they help sink us into the environment, and we just label all that as disgusting. So we try to bleach everybody and shame everybody just for their natural odors, and it's gotten to the point of absurdity, where we're just so afraid of everything bacterial that we've
Yeah.
sterilized the life out of it.
And people are afraid to touch meat, right? Like people are, a lot of people come from like plant-based diets and stuff. We work with a lot of clients that are coming off of vegan diets and their guts are a little bit wrecked. And it's so funny to see the progression because sometimes it takes months for people to be comfortable like touching a steak with their hands and then not having to like wash their hands right afterwards. Like they think they're gonna get some disease from touching the meat. Like it's just waiting to come out and bite you. Um, so yeah, I mean that's why I always like to. People laugh in the chat probably because I bring out the high meat almost every episode now. It's a fun little conversation piece, especially with somebody like you. You kind of convinced me to finally make some high meat, and I don't even know if we've talked much since I started eating it, but I had a similar experience. Like really helps with digestion. It seems to me to be now that I say it, I think we did talk about this in the last one, but it seems to be both a digestive tonic that can help boost appetite, but also something that can suppress appetite and be very energizing if you just have a few bites of high meat before some work or something like that. We got a super chat here to interrupt with the super chat. Cowitarian sends $5. Thank you for the donation, man. He says, "How old is Derek?" Thanks for the chat. Derek, that's a question for
Uh,
you, man. How old are you?
my birthday was yesterday. I
What?
just turned 36. Yeah, 36 years old.
Happy birthday, man. 36 years old. Looking good, man. Everybody's saying that he looks healthy and strong, and I think it definitely very obvious in the most recent video that we were talking about. What was it called? From what's that website called again? Or the YouTube channel?
Barcroft.
Barcroft. Barcroft. You definitely look super healthy there too, man. And yeah. So all right. So back to the high meat. When you first started doing it, was it liver or was it muscle meat?
It was primarily muscle meat. And yeah, I tried doing organs at first, but that was before, my taste had completely changed. So, like, yeah, jar meat, high meat liver is like real sour. And it was just, I didn't know if I was doing it right at first. So I just would only eat a little bit at a time. But, over time, after my taste changed, I started, fermenting about, every type of animal part. And I even I hit a goose, and I cut up a wild goose, and I swear that made about the best high meat I've ever had, and I've not been able to equal it since.
Chasing the
That
dragon
was,
on that goose and that purple meat, huh?
yeah,
Well, all
I'm
right. So
telling you that purple.
how did you do the goose? What did you put it in? A jar?
Yeah, just a jar, and I had a specific water cooler that had a little refrigerator underneath of it, and it just seemed like whatever it was at the perfect temperature and the perfect humidity, and it was whatever it was, I put in that one cooler, and whatever came out of it was usually good. It was like my
Yeah.
magical, high meat box, and then it fritzed out, and it took me a while, before I could even learn to age meat right without it. I was trying to age it outside in the fall time, which I had some good experiences doing that too, just letting whole pieces hang. Like certain times of the year in temperate zones, it's just
Mm.
right, cool, 40 degrees or so out in the meat shed, and
And it just
I was
hanging
getting,
in the air, like not enclosed in any container.
yeah, dry aging is where I transition to, and it's really more beneficial too around other people because it's less putrefied and it doesn't stink up the whole house like when you do open up a jar of high meat.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can run and get my little piece of dry aged liver. I'll show
Oh,
you.
I would love to see that because I was about to ask you. Look at that! You cut your hair, man. Derek's looking all normie core with that haircut now. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about why. I suspect this might have something to do with his recent local media appearance. Um, Derek was. They did a local news story about him after this. Here, I'll pull this up too. We'll watch a little clip from this with Derek. All right, there's the liver.
I'm back. Yeah, this is just a little fragment of a piece that I have left. And it's probably been hanging in there for 3 months. And it's gotten to the point where it's dried. So after it dries to a certain point, it doesn't really putrefy anymore. But I think some of the aged bacterial properties are still preserved within it. And
Wow.
it's like a taffy chew. I mean, it's just, I
That's
can
what it
equate it.
looks like. It looks like chocolate taffy, man. Wow. All right. I'm about to dry
It's
age some
chewy.
liver.
They just pop in your mouth like candy,
You got me on a new. Oh man! All right, so let's compare. You got dry aged liver there, and then here's just some high liver. This is a bunch of liver that I put in a jar. I don't know. Sometimes I'll drain that liquid out because it seems to ferment quicker. I left the liquid in on this one, and that's what it turns into. Let's see what the smell's like on this one. What's the smell like? Oh wow, what's the smell like on that dry aged liver? Is there any smell?
Yeah, I mean, it smells like just an aged meat. It doesn't have much of a smell. I mean, it smells delicious to me. I mean, I just can't describe it.
Yeah.
But
well, that's the thing.
Your video on me, I can't see your video.
Oh,
I didn't know if.
let me make sure that we're good on the. Can you see me now?
No.
How about now? Is it back?
No.
It must be. Maybe it's just your phone. If you.
Oh. Did something happen to it?
Maybe.
What I need.
Because it's feeding through. It's feeding through there. I was trying to show you my high liver.
Nope.
How about now? Can you see me now?
All right, let me get back. No.
No.
We can go on with it if I can't see the visual. It's fine. If you can't show me anything.
Oh shoot! Well, yeah, that's too bad because it takes a little bit away. But what if you just refresh? If you refresh that page, got a bunch of people in the chat. We got 342 people watching. What's up, everybody? Hey, make sure we got 342 people in the chat. Make sure to hit the like, grease up that algorithm. Let's get us back in the good graces of the AI overlords and let them promote this video because Google's kind of put our channel here on the back shelf on YouTube. All right, now your video's crooked. Still no?
Nope.
All right, can you turn your camera? It's like your thing's crooked there.
Oh, there it goes. Okay, it's something happened.
Now we're like
I think my little
turn
my
sideways.
sensor's on.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right, man. Yeah, I was showing you a little bit of high liver here. I know you've seen loads of it in your days, but it's kind of hard to see, I guess. The lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real dark.
Looks good.
It smells like wine. You know, this one smells like a red wine almost. I'll try a little bite here. But there's what it looks like for you guys. This is I think this is like 4 or 5 months old. I'm not sure what the date on this one is. Let me see. This is from February 3rd, so it's a few months old. We'll do a little taste test. Woo! Wow.
You know, I've experimented with halfway aging high meat in the jar and then taking it out to dry age the rest of the way. Like, you might be able to experiment some with that, just taking some of those pieces and hang them on hooks in their fridge and just let them kind of dry a little bit. And then, get that chewy aged flavor. And I mean, it
That's
might
a good idea.
turn into wonderful.
This one's really tart. It's got like a sweet, kind of robust, almost wine type flavor with some tartness, like a I don't know, almost like
Real dry.
yeah, like a grape or something. Makes you pucker a little bit, almost sour. Yeah, that's what I love about high meat is every single batch is slightly different.
and and the science behind it is not there. No one's really delving in. I think just recently, saw something about the gut biome of a carnivore,
Yeah.
and how some of the bacteria that they thought were just for fermenting plants actually ferment different parts of meat, and they create the short chain fatty acids. They help
Yep.
protect the gut membrane. There's all this stuff coming out now about how we don't need fiber in our gut to produce these probiotics that are supposed to make everything so wonderful.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other mechanisms, and actually the ketones, our body can excrete ketones in the gut mucus that feed bacteria, and or we can break down proteins into carbs. There's bacteria that do that
Yep.
feed other bacteria, and they
Yeah.
form these bio to where if we can't make something, our biome can make it for us if we're nourishing it with the
Yeah.
proper raw ingredients. And so there's no one way either. There's people who can make things work more omnivorously, and I'm not saying that carnivore diet is for everyone, but
Yeah.
there's so much with this interplay between these microbes that we have no idea. And it's funny to see the arrogance of a lot of people to just say that you have to have plant fiber in order for this bacteria to convert this into fatty acid. And
Yeah.
like, there's no way.
Yeah, no, I mean, you open up this jar, you take a bite of something like this, and anybody who's ever done, lots of fermented foods, sauerkraut, beet kvass or something, anybody who's been into fermented foods, I challenge you, try some high liver and tell me that it's not the king of all fermented foods. Like, try some high meat, whether it be muscle meat or liver. I usually try to advise people go for the liver first because the muscle meat can get kind of an ammonia smell, which can off-put a lot of people. Doesn't bother me, but yeah, try it out. Take the 3 month high meat challenge. Make some high meat. Let it sit for 3 months in your fridge, and try some. And tell me that that's not 100 times more powerful than any freaking sauerkraut or fermented vegetable that you've ever had. Because it's incomparable. They call it high meat, and a lot of people say that they feel high when they eat it. They literally get a mood boost. They feel energy, and it's not like this narcotic high where you're gonna crash and you're gonna be scratching yourself and acting like a junkie. But it's energy, constant energy, kind of relaxation, soothing, and it tastes unlike anything else you've ever tasted. So yeah, I got to thank Derek for helping to nudge me towards finally trying high meat because it's one of my favorite foods now. And it's something I cycle in and out. Like, I don't eat it every day. Had some yesterday, had some today. Might go 3-4 days without wanting any, and then it'll pop into my mind. And I'll think, I have a little bite of high meat right now. It seems like you kind of eat in a similar way, right? You're going intuitive. You know what your body needs.
Yeah, there's a gut brain connection,
Mm.
and it will tell you, like, if you tune into it, how much of what you need and when. There's really no need to force it. Like, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to eat a ton of high meat because I think I need probiotics." That's not the way the body works. The body, gets signals, and there's feedback signals in the gut brain, and they found that these bacteria produce the precursors to serotonin. And botulism and salmonella and E. coli. There's healthy colonies of these bacteria in the guts of everybody,
Yeah.
and people who aren't sick. And these bacteria that they say can potentially be pathogenic also produce the precursors to the neurotransmitters and all the other enzymes that the body needs to be healthy and for the mind to be healthy. So, like, when you have that craving and you eat a piece of high meat like that, that might be something that your gut needs. It needs that little serotonin boost, and it's a natural serotonin boost that helps facilitate digestion and assimilation of nutrients. So it's beneficial all around, without any like negative hangover like effects when you're talking about fermented grains and
Oh, yeah.
alcohol and all these other types of ferments that might not be so healthy.
Well, that's an interesting thing because I mean, I wasn't even thinking about alcohol, right? But there's a really potent example right there. It's the fourth macronutrient, a lot of people call it. Your body can burn alcohol as a fuel. There's detriments, there's side effects, just like, with any fuel source. I mean, fat, I would say, is one of the cleanest burning fuel sources. But, of course, hey, for some people, very difficult to tap into fat as a fuel source. Metabolically, some people aren't healthy enough to be burning fat. Mitochondrial biogenesis is necessary to burn those fats. And so, I'll be the first one to tell you there are some downsides in some situations to a ketogenic approach, especially, high-level athletes. Maybe if you're sweating a whole bunch, you're doing a lot of glycolytic activity. If you're working construction outside in the hot sun, maybe a little more carbohydrates will be helpful. But there are downsides to carbohydrates as well. We all see insulin resistance and all this stuff. But alcohol, one of the most commonly consumed fermented foods worldwide, has all sorts of negative side effects. But shoot, I've never seen anybody have an adverse reaction yet to high meat. Now, I'm not saying that you won't have an adverse reaction to it. If you force foods in that you're not ready for, you might have an issue. But have you ever seen or heard of anybody having like a negative reaction to high meat? Because everyone I've given it to, from total normies who eat whatever they want, I've had friends who they eat whatever the heck they want. They feel good. They're fine. I give them some high meat. They love it. They feel great. I've given it to some people. They're just like, yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not so into it. But they didn't, they didn't feel bad afterwards. Have you ever seen anyone suffer ill consequences from it?
I haven't personally. I mean, I think some people might have forced it, or weird food combinations. If you're eating it with a bunch of vegetables and other things, you could probably, have an episode of diarrhea or something, stomach ache. But we're not talking about keeling over. Like some of the people in the comment sections, skull and crossbones. Oh, it's just a matter of time before. It's like they're wishing death on me to prove themselves right.
Yeah.
Like I don't see that happening, and so I know a lot of people who die over alcohol poisoning, but I don't know of anybody who's done the high meat and just dropped over dead.
Yeah. Well, sorrel. There's a case of a guy, type 2 diabetic, who had a big bowl of sorrel soup and he died of oxalate toxicity. And that's, it's documented. It's on PubMed, and there's just some healthy leafy green vegetables right there. Literally killed the dude. So here's some high muscle meat for everybody watching. This was inspired by Derek. Made some. They call it pecho here, which just means chest, but that's brisket. And this is really fatty. This stuff, I don't know. Let's see if you can watch me pull it apart there. If you're listening later on. It's just a big clump of meat, big sticky clump of meat, and this stuff is just so soft and kind of creamy. You could see the fat has also kind of fermented, putrefied there. The smell, the smell of the high muscle meat might be a little bit much for some people, but the taste and the effects are they're so potent. I mean, it's one of the most, I would have never thought I'd be eating this. And I'm a food snob, right? Like my dad always told me when I was growing up, that you should be a food connoisseur, because I'm always describing tastes and enjoying the weird funky foods. But man, the stuff is just so good. So yeah, Derek, thanks for helping introduce me and the audience to fermented meats. You look hungry as you look at me eating that high meat.
Yeah, I'm thinking about taking another bite of mine.
There you go.
I got much left. Save it. This is my last, like my really good, really dry aged stuff.
Do you save the best bites for last? Like, is there a specific bite you're like, that's the juicy one, I'm gonna eat all around that, and that'll be my dessert bite when I finish it?
I have, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I saved this best piece for last, and it's like 3 months old in the fridge, and no other special preservatives or preparation for it. And there's even every now and then, like a little piece of fuzzy mold will grow on it. And, years ago, we're like fearful, oh my God, you're going to die of something if, there's mold growing on it, but it's perfectly fine. And who knows, it's probably beneficial one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just the taste it's unlike any other food. It sticks in your mouth. I mean, it feels so good going down, and it's so invigorating. Like there's just, it's unlike any other food that I've ever experienced. So that's why we put it a little shout out to. Go ahead.
Yeah, start drying some of that liver. I'm telling you, like after about a week or so, when that outside layer gets real chewy, it just has a flavor that you can't match. So I just like to recommend that to anybody else who's experimenting with high meats.
I'm gonna try it, man. Yeah, no, I've got to get a dry aging fridge that I can use just for dry aging because this is something that's coming up a lot. I just don't have the refrigerator space. I have a whole refrigerator full of jars like this of high meat. I've got about 15 jars of this type of stuff that I made over like a 3 month period, and I've got to start clearing that out for some new high meat because
Well,
I'm really liking the brisket. I think the brisket might be my favorite, other than liver.
you can make a dual purpose fridge. I don't know if you have much room, but where I keep mine in a meat locker, it's I got an adjustable thermostat, like what you use for brewing wine or making cheese. Like they sell these thermostats that you can use as a bypass for the power to your refrigerator, and you can just adjust the temperature, and I can keep it right above freezing, around 35 degrees or so,
Nice.
and then I put a towel in the bottom to soak up extra humidity.
Yeah.
And some people, you can even put a fan in there if it's too humid. It depends on where you live and how humid the area is. But you can dry it out that way. But you can keep the high meat jars in that same cooler that you're dry aging with, because the temperature is still relatively low, so you can age them both side by side in the same fridge.
That's a really good
Or
idea. Because I mean, I would, as far as fridge space, electrical usage and budget goes, I would prioritize, just in my situation right now, I'd prioritize high meat because I feel like I could put more in a small amount of space, right? Whereas if you're hanging it up, you need space for it to aerate and whatnot. I would love to make
yeah,
a walk-in dry aging chamber. That would be nice. There's a little dry aging cave or something. Like people make those cheese caves on their properties. We might have to do one of those.
yeah, and there's stories about middle in the Middle East. They have these cellars where they keep the lamb, and they let it dry age down there in the bottom of the cellars, and they cut it off, and it's practically high meat in other cultures. So
Yeah, yeah.
like it depends on where you are latitude wise. I don't know, the different temperatures, ambient temperatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you started. Let's go back to kind of your history on the meat now. I think a lot of people are wondering, how much you've swayed from the diet in the last 10 years of doing essentially a raw animal-based diet where you're slaughtering your own animals, eating them nose to tail. Um, they want to know if you're eating leafy greens or are you eating vegetables? Are you doing fruit? Or is it just pretty much all meat?
It's 90 95% meat, and I still, I'll go back to this. I do coconut butter. I'll take a couple
Okay.
tablespoons of coconut butter every day,
A little
and I
sweetness.
think,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's a candy. It's like a sweetness. If coconut butter is just pureed raw coconut. It's nothing added and nothing taken away. So it just seems to have a very small amount of very low glycemic carbs that seem to balance my energy. And then I think the coconut fat itself, I think it helps boost overall fat metabolism. And it might have been something that helped me early into the diet when I was using coconut butter during the transition phase when I was running low on animal fats, and it just seemed to help boost overall fat digestion. I don't know, there's something about it
Hmm.
that help vitalize those mitochondria that might be dormant. And there's a lot of people that do have problems, transitioning just because their mitochondria have never really functioned properly to begin with. And it's just, I think something like that, like a coconut butter, could help, boost energy production for people transitioning. And it's just a theory I have, but a lot of people that I've turned on to coconut butter really like it, and they seem to do all right with it. And there's a few people that say that all coconut they just don't react to. So, like I said, there might be a tolerance issue, depending on who
Mm.
you are, if you can
Yeah.
tolerate it or not.
Yeah, I think with coconut, Andrew Scarborough, a friend of mine, he's in the chat right now. Um, he's a friend of the channel here. Andrew Scarborough has also been, he must be like 6 or 7 years, and he does a very high raw as well, and nose to tail animal food diet. He was treating brain cancer, using it as an adjunct therapy for cancer, and he also found though that coconut for him was triggering because he was real sensitive to what are called salicylates, which that's just a class of plant toxins of anti-nutrients. Actually, salicylates are what aspirin is made out of. And so he found that anything with salicylates would make him really, really kind of go off the rails as far as neurology and his metabolism goes. So if anybody's out there is sensitive to salicylates, then coconut oil and stuff like that for Andrew and for some other people, they find that it could be an issue. But I love coconut butter too. I don't find myself eating it, but I do like the
Yep.
taste.
Yeah, I agree. There's people coming from different places, health wise, and I think where maybe it was more calming, more anti-inflammatory to me. But if you have sensitivities to, salicylates, then it might not be the way to go. But maybe I built up an ungodly tolerance too, or maybe there's a combination of things. Maybe there's something else that people are eating along with the coconut that could be triggering. So like, there's so many factors involved. That's why. I never prescribe anything to anybody.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to start doing coconut butter, and if you have a reaction to it, that's just detox, and you got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And but I do suggest that people are curious about it, and if you like coconut and you're trying to transition to a high fat diet, and you might not be able to come across a lot of animal fats, that coconut fat could be a benefit. And I've always liked the butter better than the oil. I've never done well with the oil. Like, it's just never appealed to me. First of all,
well, you take a bite of straight coconut oil. I mean, the taste is neutral at best, but a bite of coconut butter, it's got flavor, and it's got a good texture to it. It feels more like a food. And when I actually experimented back in my vegan diet experimentation days, when I made the fatal mistake of removing all animal foods from the diet for playing with it on and off for a little while, thinking that this might be a healthy way to go. I loved coconut butter, man. I was just thinking back on those days, like we would get jars of it. I just scoop it out of the jar and probably ate way too much. If you eat too much of it, you'll feel a little heavy. And but the body needs fats. And I think my body, if I would have just had some good sheep fat from the purple flesh sheep that Derek's buddy was getting for him a few years back, I think I would have felt much better than if I was doing the butter, the spoonfuls of the coconut butter. But I'm also a fan of coconut butter. I might have to try some of that sometime soon. My kids love coconuts. They like the coconut water, and in the U.S.
you can make you can make your own. It's just labor intensive. Like, you shave the coconut and then you can put it in a dehydrator. You dehydrate it and then you just puree it together. Or if you have one of those like heavy duty juicers, like the Omega juicers that have the auger that compress it, you can grind your own butter. It's just labor intensive to do. I used to do coconut cream too. I make my own coconut cream, and it's just the labor and for what you get out of it. It's just better off just getting a jar of butter. It seems to work just fine with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we got a little super chat here. Ramiel says $2. Thanks for the donation, man. He says, the truth, does high meat gives you a good high? So Ramiel, I'm curious where you're from. I like the way you phrase that sentence. I love when the English is a second language. I love reading people's English. It's great. Thank you, dude. I mean, as far as like a real high, I don't know what you're chasing. I mean, it's not going to get you high like some of these plants will. If you smoke pot or something, it's not like that. But I mean, some people, they say coffee gives them kind of a high. For me, high meat gives steady energy, mental clarity. And when I first ate it, it doesn't give me this anymore, but the first few times I ate it felt very, very blissful. It was like my gut was just saying, thank you so much. We're going to make all these B vitamins, or we're going to make some dopamine. Whatever happened, neurologically it affected me, and it felt very beneficial, but not like a high as in like a drug high. More like a just, okay, you're dialed in, you're tuned in. You know that feeling when you're just in a groove, where you're playing a sport or something, or if you're working with your body and everything is functioning right, and you feel connected with your body and in control of your body. That's how I would describe it. Derek, what about you, man?
Yeah, you said it right there. Bliss. I mean, that's the word. It's just outside turmoil. Anything could be going on in the world, but you feel this inner bliss. You feel the energy to cope with it, and you don't get stressed out. You don't get hung up. You don't get uptight about things as much. I used to, have a lot of emotional ups and downs, and especially when I was going through my health struggles and anger. Just anger at the world and frustration. and all that stuff seemed to level out once I started doing high meat. It was, I mean, it all the benefits of what they say antidepressants give without any of the side effects. And like I
Right?
said, what they say antidepressants, because the actual effects are just
Yeah.
god awful in a lot of cases. So like what it levels out my moods. It makes me feel balanced and blissful, and just where I can take on anything without having to stress.
There you go. That's a good way of putting it, man. Yeah. So when you say high, to me, like getting high, it sounds so unsustainable, right? It's like you get high, you're gonna crash, right? You take a
Yes.
narcotic, you take some sort of a drug, you're gonna have a come down. Whereas it's almost like it's like extreme sobriety, right? It's like especially when you're a kid, right? You're a kid, you experiment with drugs, you smoke weed every day during high school, stuff like that, and then you quit smoking weed. You feel high because you stopped doing all the shit that you were numbing yourself with, right? So it's to me, it's like that. It's like just more of a realistic connection to reality rather than being filtered through a fake high. Because when someone says high, I kind of think on my days as a kid where I was getting high all the time, and then I stopped, and it was like, oh damn, like I feel so much more in control. I feel so much better when I'm not getting high all the time. So that's how I look at it. Diet is a powerful tool, and like you said, man, antidepressants, they got a hell of a lot of side effects. But if you can manage um, your mental state, your psychological state through taking care of the body and actually making sure that the body is not being poisoned constantly with shitty foods that you can't digest, it does change things a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right about it being the antithesis of high. Like, yeah, it's more of a inner feeling of peace and clarity, and it's not a high like you're just out there in outer space, going off on some wacky adventure. It's really just grounding. You're in your body, you're feeling your body and how its energy is welling up, and how you can focus that through your mind to get things accomplished. And
Mm.
it increased my productivity more than anything. Being able to keep that calm and keep that focus, and just that good steady energy that you can use to work. It's not like the type of high where people are just bouncing off the walls and tweaking out
Yeah.
because they're just overstimulated. It's more of a calm, balanced feeling.
Right. It's not like caffeine where your heart rate's gonna go up. It's gonna change your blood pressure. It's not like that. It's more like yeah, I like that. It's like extreme sobriety. So the opposite of high. I like that. Sober is the new high, you guys, in the world of degeneracy that we see being pushed through media. Sobriety might be the most profound state that the kids could be chasing these days. Because how rare is sobriety now? Got a lot of people throwing out comments. Thanks, guys, for watching. We got 320 people in the chat. Make sure to hit the like, because YouTube does, the algorithm does like it when you like it. So like it, share it, because YouTube is not doing a very good job of sharing these videos lately. But we'll see. We'll get back in the good graces of the AI overlords if we get enough likes and shares on this one. So what are some of you mentioned you've done high marrow before? High bone marrow?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah, I
for
mean
some
that's a
reason that freaks me
well,
out. How did you do it?
well, I mean, I just let the bones age in my dry ager. Just let it sit and age for a few months, maybe a couple months in the top rack of my meat locker, and crack them open. And I ate some earlier today. It has a sour taste, but it's not completely putrefied like you'd think jar high meat. So
Hmm.
it's got a good flavor, and it depends on how long you age it for. And it doesn't seem to go bad. Like I said, it it will go have a rancid taste after 2 or 3 months. This eventually the fats, and that's why you don't really want to make a lot of jar high meat with fat. I
Mm.
think that the fats really go rancid, and it's just a different kind of ferment that might not be so beneficial.
Okay.
But when you're dry aging, it's more of the aerobic bacteria. When you have it out in the open air, so like it has a more oxygenated bacterial environment that I think is more conducive for the beneficial microbes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because I got this jar right next to me, and it's brisket. It's pretty fatty. I mean, there's some big chunks of fat on it, and it's been my favorite one that I've made in so long. But you tend to go for more of like the leaner stuff when you're fermenting.
How old is it though? How old
Uh,
is the brisket that you?
March 3rd, April, May, June, so
Okay.
almost about 4 months. I mean, you can
And you're
see
saying it's
this.
still pretty good with it?
To me, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
getting nothing but benefits. I crave it. I mean, I could eat another bite right now. It's so good.
Yeah, I've just had different experiences. Sometimes the fatty stuff ages good, sometimes it doesn't. But
Mm,
then sometimes just anything ages good, and sometimes it doesn't.
right.
You
So,
just have to have that right, perfect storm of conditions to really make the right high meat. And I
mm,
wish there was a lot more interest in studying this scientifically, so that we could, perfect it like they make cheeses and wines. There is an art to it.
what would be great if some people would start doing some tests on what type of bacteria are in here and doing, before and after gut microbiome tests with high meat. Now, where I live in Ecuador, we don't really have resources like you do in the U.S., but um, you mentioned earlier people on a carnivore diet getting their gut microbiome tested and seeing that they have way more of certain strains of bacteria that people once thought were only for fermenting plants. There are also a lot of B vitamin producing bacteria that people are finding, especially folate producing bacteria that people are finding when they eat an all meat diet. I find that real interesting because people say, well, you're going to miss out on folate if you're not eating a lot of things like liver, right? Because liver has a decent amount of folate. But when you cook it, it decreases. Most people are cooking the liver. But this guy that did his gut microbiome test found that he had way more folate producing bacteria in there. So it goes beyond just your the it goes beyond just the nutrients that we see on paper in the foods. We might be seeing other nutrients produced by the gut microbiome, or other nutrients might be made more bioavailable because of the absence of plant toxins and things that are going to bind up to it. But here's my little. I'll take another bite of this. This is a really good one. This pecho or brisket rather, really nice. Um, There's a real fatty bite. So creamy. So
Yeah, I'd like to try. I mean, it's hard to taste the high meat from around the world. It's just something. It's hard to get
I
it
wish I could
sourced. You
send you
can't really
some, man. Yeah, I wish I could ship you a jar. I
do
want
a high meat exchange program.
We're gonna have to set that
So
up. Set up a high meat exchange. A high meat. Like people make those dating apps. We'll just make a high meat exchange app. It'll be like Tinder for high meat.
and everybody like, check this one out. This one's high.
Yeah, man. So what about
I'm I'm getting kind of high right now. I've been eating way too much.
he's eating that high liver? Yeah, no, I really, really like the idea of dry aging the liver, and it's funny that you brought this up and you brought this out today as we do our little. They call this mukbang, I guess. It's like when you eat a bunch of food on a video. It's like a mukbang. It's like a Korean thing. So I don't know. We got a high meat mukbang going on today, but someone posted a picture of dry aged liver on Instagram, and I reposted it in my story the other day, yesterday. So it's funny that you bring this up because it's already fresh in my mind. I'm gonna have to make some of that jerky. Well,
Okay,
let's talk
you can
about.
dry.
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say let's talk about this recent video we've got. We'll pull it up here. We can maybe go through it and talk about the process of making this because I really like this. This is like a professionally made video, man. This has got 184,000 views, bringing a lot of recognition to the whole carnivorous diet here. So I gotta thank Barcroft TV for not making this a hit piece, even though they put a warning at the beginning, which I think is frivolous. Let's check this out. Confirm with me if the audio is going through to you as well, Derek.
The auto's in. I've lost video, so I've just been talking to it.
Oh, sure.
About 90% of my diet is raw sheep meat. I'm just some buddy living in obscurity, eating my intestine smoothies in my kitchen.
Okay, I love that line. I'm just somebody living in obscurity, eating my intestine smoothies in my kitchen. Uh,
Now, what's really funny is like that was on the tail end of a rant about me against the man, how they'll never come to me and really test me and tell me, what they think. They won't debate me because I'm just somebody living in obscurity. So like they completely edited out that really anti-establishment rant that I was doing.
Okay.
But in the end, I think it's probably for the best. It's keeps things more topical and light. But it was just, and I like the way they did it because it was completely neutral. And yeah, I think that they weren't out to do a hit piece. And so they captured basically the spirit of what I had to say without going into all the nitty gritty details, which a lot of times their audience wouldn't be able to glean anyway off of an 8-minute clip.
Yeah, and the vibe is nice. I mean, it's just kind of cordial. You're in your house. They don't have scary music playing. Usually,
That's that ominous music they try to sneak in there.
throw the horror music over it. I like so the intestine smoothies. What's up with the intestine smoothies? They put that at the beginning of the video. What the heck is an intestine smoothie? And why are you doing that, Derek?
I don't know. Maybe I have a death wish. I mean, according to some of those people. No, I mean, I showed them the entire process, and they just clipped it down, for their show. But I was getting the intestines out, and I was squeezing the mucus out, and I was explaining like, well, this is the intestinal mucus. This is completely unwashed. It has all the enzymes, all the bacteria, and all the prebiotics that the gut produces to feed the bacteria. And so all that was intact in the sheep, and I just blended all together just to make it more convenient to eat, and then trying to slurp down, big 30-foot pieces of intestine. It's just and the stomach can get kind of chewy too because it's really full of collagen, and the actual stomach lining itself is kind of tough. So just to make it easier to consume, I'll just blend it all together, and I'll even sometimes cut a little piece of pancreas. I'll get the sweetbreads, a pancreas, a little chunk of liver, and I think that adds to the digestive enzyme blend. And it's, I think, a digestive tonic. You eat half a bowl of that, an hour or two before my main meal during the day, towards the end of the day. And it just seems to, boost the digestion. And I don't know if it's a direct prebiotic effect or the digestive enzymes or just a culmination of everything, but it just seems to suit well with my gut.
Were you worried the first time you tried that, or what? Did someone convince you, or you just like, you know what, I'm gonna eat the intestines? Because to me, it seems like the most. This is why I love talking to you, because I mean, it took me a little bit to even think about making high liver, right? And then I talk to a guy like you, and you're just like, yeah, man, I make my intestine smoothie every morning, and I, just blend it all up. It's okay. It's you comfort me, Derek, that you go 10 steps further than I'm willing to go at any given time, and you've already done anything I could think about possibly doing with animal foods. So, like raw tripe smoothies, where did you get this idea?
Well, I mean, just through a lot of the forums and some of the recommendations by people like Ogenus, who swore up and down that parasites were good, and that he would prescribe intestinal smoothies pig intestine smoothies for people with a lot of autoimmune conditions, because he thought that the whipworms and the trichinosis would actually stimulate and strengthen the immune system. So I didn't go as far as to blend up the undulants for their parasites for trichinosis and whatnot, but I was killing a lot of ruminants. And as far as I know, the ruminating animals, the types of worms and stuff that affect them aren't easily transferable to people unless you have like a really severely deficient immune system. You might have to worry about it, but then you have a lot of other concerns as well. But as far as I didn't have any fear at all. I was just more queasy about there's fecal matter, so that's not good. So at first I would I'd take the intestines and I'd put it under the faucet and just rinse everything out.
That's what they do here. That's what they do here before, when they're making tripe and stuff, they rinse the stuff out. This is why I think it's so funny that you're just like, you know what, I'm going to throw it all in the smoothie.
Well, they rinse it and then they boil it for like a day, and they just like make sure that they, sterilize it completely. And to me, a sterilized tripe is just worthless. It doesn't have the bacterial, the living elements. It's just pretty much cooked collagen. Once you get rid of all the digestive juices and all the living elements in there, it's just, you might as well be eating powdered collagen. It's not. It doesn't have that living food effect. So yeah, I now I just kind of squeeze out, what I can as far as the gut juices and just throw it in there completely unwashed. And it might be the acquired taste. Like the taste of the digestive juices is really the first thing that, would put people off. It's like bile, just if you ever imagine, I don't know if you ever had a liver with the bile still on it or the gallbladder still on it, but
Yeah.
it has a bile-like flavor.
Interesting.
And that can take a little bit to get past, but once you get used to it, you're like, wow, this is good. And you can feel it like going in through your gut, and then your gut tells you, oh yeah, this is good, this is helping me digest. Because now I can take bile shots. I'll take some of the bile out of the gallbladder and take a shot of it before my meal.
Okay.
And it'll just start the gut. People sell those freeze dried bile, ox bile stuff as digestive aids, but no, raw, straight from the source.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing. A lot of people are comfortable doing something like, we mentioned the sponsor. Shout out to Ancestral Supplements, who does grass-fed, grass-finished organs that they encapsulate, because most people, in the normal world, haven't ventured into such, dietary, dark alleys. I guess a lot of people might think of it as guys like Derek and I have explored, and Derek has gone straight to the bile. So instead of taking ox bile salts, which benefit a lot of people who are who need a little bit of digestive aid, people will take the ox bile salts to break down the proteins, and Derek is just taking the ox bile straight from the ox.
Yeah, and all the other glands and all the the sweetbreads. The pancreas is another one that you can get the pancreatin, or the encapsulated glandulars, which can be beneficial, but in the raw form, I think it's just so much more so.
Oh
It's
yeah,
fresh and it's still
absolutely.
alive. And there's something about the pancreas, and once like if you eat it right when it's out of the animal, like it tingles, like you can just feel the enzymes, tingle as they go down the throat, and it's almost like a high meat like feeling,
Yeah,
just
high meat
the
is
fresh.
that too. Hmm.
Mhm.
Sweetbreads
So
are real
you can feel
good.
the enzymes.
The sweetbreads are so fatty too. I mean, it's not it's not. I'm not sure exactly what it is that makes them so delicious, but it's got this like pudding type consistency, and it's almost sweet. That's why I call them sweetbreads, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, and when pioneers were out there hunting, and they're dropping the big game, that's about the sweetest thing they had around.
Yeah.
I guess they named it sweetbreads, especially the old keto hunters and trappers.
That's a fascinating culture. When anybody wants to learn a little bit about some of that world, Stephenson kind of talks about his years as an Arctic explorer. But when you look at the fur trappers and stuff in the Pacific Northwest and throughout the continental U.S. and Canada, some really interesting stories as well. But yeah, the history of high meat, of eating nose to tail, of eating these foods. I mean, this is something that people have been doing from time immemorial. I mean, we've only recently had refrigeration where we're able to control temperature, and keeping food in a freezer year round, even in the summer. That's something that's new. So people have been using the whole animal for a damn long time, and eating things like sweetbreads, eating things like brain, eating things like the glandulars, and definitely suggest people look into eating nose to tail, look into learning about nose to tail food prep. We've got a nice section on nose to tail eating here in the Carnivore Cookbook, which you can find in the link down in the description below. And mentioned again, Ancestral Supplements. They make some really good grass-fed, grass-finished beef organs, and they do some glandular stuff as well. You can find them at ancestralsupplements.com. There's links down in the description of the video for both of those. So shout out to the sponsor, Ancestral Supplements. You guys are doing a great job out there. Andrew Scarborough, cool. Andrew's back in the chat. He says he's been eating veal sweetbreads, mainly veal sweetbread. That sounds pretty good. Although, I don't know. What are your thoughts on veal? I find that veal liver is so flavorless compared to like a mature animal's liver. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and it's not just veal; it's lambs too. Like I do mutton primarily, so
Mm,
I've geared away from cattle just because it's easier for me to source and process my own sheep.
that's true.
But yeah, I've tried veal and I've tried aged cattle and all types of other types of beef. But yeah, the veal it's just, yeah, there's no flavor. Just like the lamb, like people think that the lamb is the best part because it's, young and it's supposed to be tender and doesn't have a strong flavor, but it doesn't have any flavor as far as
Right.
I'm
It's like
concerned.
it's like a dry, soggy tomato or something. That veal liver. I'm not into it.
Yeah. But here's the thing too. I think it takes years to really accumulate, the nutrients from rich, lush pastures, and so like animals that are slaughtered when they're babies or juveniles, I just don't think they've had time to bioaccumulate and to fully mature and ripen. Just like picking an unripe tomato, something like that. You need an animal that's ripe, and that's just what I'm talking about with the purple meat. Like the best meats I found were animals, over 4, 5, 6 years old that have, been able to age on the pasture, and like their meat is just so much richer, and they have time to accumulate the fat. So like people say that it's hard to fatten an animal up on grass. Well, it is in the first 2 years of life.
Right. Well, they want to
But
slaughter them at like a year old. I mean, they're trying to slaughter these things 9 to 12 months. Yeah, of course you're gonna want to feed it grain if you're doing that.
to get
Ridiculous.
some fat on it, but then that's not the best type of fat you should be putting on the animal.
Yeah.
And it's all about human impatience and greed. I mean, you just can't wait 4 or 5 years, for an animal to fully mature in order to get that money. So people, breeders, and it's people good intentioned, grass-fed operations, even, they just go through the standard program of, butchering them under 2 years old just so that they can make a living in a market that's, very competitive, and there's not much room for error. So yeah, I can see why people produce animals the way they do. It's just not conducive for the best quality. And some of the best cattle I've ever had were over 11, 12 years old. And the guy that I learned from, he said the best cow he ever had, and he's been butchering since he was, a kid because his dad owned the butcher shop. He said it was a 17-year-old cow that was just out in the pasture, put out to pasture without any stress or anything on it. And just the richness of that flesh is just incomparable. And I don't think a lot of people even had a chance, an opportunity to have it. The healthy aged flesh, not the stressed, feedlot animal that gets a little old and has to be cold. But I'm talking about the one that's just out there on the lush pasture without a care in the world its whole life, and properly aged, completely still healthy, and that flesh there is just, it's uncomparable.
It's hard to
I've not
find.
been able to.
It's hard to find
It's
them
hard to find.
because most people are slaughtering. I mean, here they usually slaughter between 1 and 4 years, and you don't find many that are that much older. I mean, they'll keep for beef cows, for beef cattle, they don't let them age that much. I mean, they're quick to slaughter, so they don't get as fatty as they could, um, and people end up eating a lot of the younger animals. So yeah, it's a shame. Most people haven't really experienced really good, properly raised meat, and but I think it's fun talking to
And
people. Yeah.
I just have concerns about a lot of people who are going for, the grass fed, the store bought stuff that is off of these juvenile animals. And they're primarily, either steers, castrated males, or, young female animals that aren't even fully mature. So maybe they're not having the proper hormone balance, and they don't get to have the proper forage, and they don't fatten up completely. So yeah, I just don't think that it's the right balance. So like even people who try to do a carnivore diet with the best of intentions, if they're just buying store-bought steaks and maybe a few, organ meats here and there, but from these animals that aren't fully mature and not, fully nutrient dense and not been raised on a lush pasture and been fed, processed hay and other types of forage that might not be optimal. Well, maybe they're not having the best results.
It could be.
Maybe they're doing a lot better than they were on, cooked and processed foods, but maybe they could have so much better results if they really go out there and try to source some of these, golden unicorn animals.
Well, yeah. Well, what's funny too is people like to make excuses like, "Oh, well, I live in the suburbs or I live in a city, so I can't source good food." But Derek, you're not like living out in the middle of nowhere, are you? You're not exactly, roughing it hillbilly style up in the country. Like it seems like you live in a pretty normal neighborhood, and you're slaughtering animals in your backyard.
Yeah, well, we live in a city. It's probably about 400,000 people in the surrounding area,
It's a big city.
but it's surrounded by horse farms. So like it's surrounded by horse farms, and if you go 30, 40 miles out, there's farmland. So you just have to, I look on Eat Wild, I look on Craigslist, I call around and try to find some of these local farmers, that people who breed animals for themselves. And, some of them are, professional breeders that breed breeding stock, and they're really stingy with their stuff, and it's hard to get them off of a good one. But every now and then I'll be able to convince some of these people to sell me some from their private stash, and I can get whole animals that way, and it's not easy, and it's a struggle, because where I live, we're on in between the industrial world and the rural hills and hollers. So there's some areas where you really can't find good animals, and then there's some areas where it's really good and really lush.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes hard for people to discern where to go and to get the best animals, and how best to go about it. So it's been a learning process for me, and I'm still learning. I'm still struggling from time to time to find the animals that are up to my standard.
Which, you got that high standard. You got a real high standard. So I think this is.
Well, that's it. It's yeah. There's nobody with my types of standards. Like, I'll taste an animal and it's like, ah, shit.
Gonna go return this one. put the guts back in. Let's sew it up and bring it back to the.
But you can't go out to a farm and it's like, hey, can I get a biopsy? Just cut a little piece off the back end of that.
I'll just take a little piece of the rump real quick and taste it. Oh yeah, it's good. Oh man. Well, that's the thing. A 10 years on a raw carnivore diet, I could imagine that you've become quite the meat snob, quite the sheep snob. I think. How about let's kind of maybe we start wrapping it up here. I try to keep these under 2 hours, and I really appreciate you coming on talking to us for so long. But let's see. I got several other places that we can go with this, but I want to talk a little bit about fat and about your favorite types of fat. When you're slaughtering a sheep, there's things like the suet. There's fat that's in some of the muscle meat if it's well marbled. But what are the best? Where's the best fat coming from off of an animal that you are slaughtering? Mutton primarily is what you're doing. What are your favorite fat pieces on that animal?
I mean, there's different food groups and there's different fat groups. So, you got the marrow, you got the suet, you got the back fat, you got the brains, and even fatty, like around the tongue, the back of the tongue's got a real sweet fat. And so, like, it's just dispersed throughout the whole animal. But yeah, some of the best go-to fats are, I guess, the caul fats and the suet that are surround the organs or the back of the kidneys. It's some of the softest and most easy to digest fat. And then, of course, the marrow. I think the marrow's about the premium fat that you can get. But, it's limited. You can only get so much of it off an animal. You can't just live off of marrow fat.
Which type of marrow do you like the most? Because I know there's lower on the legs, going to give you a different consistency than a little higher up. What type of marrow is your favorite?
I guess, the femur bone, the middle femur bone, where you can get, the real white, creamy stuff. And depending on the age of the animal, like younger animals, sometimes will have the red, they're still developing. So like they have all the red tissue and the blood still in the joints and it's not quite matured, but it's still good.
Stephenson talked about that in his book too. Stephenson talked about how if the animal is starving or if the animal is not properly developed, the bone marrow is it's not as fatty, and you'll just see like red juices in the bone rather than properly developed fat. So it's definitely something that a lot of people have noticed too. And that goes back to the mature animal thing, right? And a lot of hunters, they love these mature, like if you're getting an elk or if you're going to harvest moose, they say that the best ones are the oldest, that the best yielding meat, the best fat, and the best meat comes from those older animals too. Sounds like you're onto something.
Well, I mean, it's not me. It's the persistence hunters that used to run these things down on foot back in the, primal days. They would go after the big animals, the big males with the big horns, because a lot of times those were the easiest to exhaust because they had a lot of weight, a lot of fat, and we evolved as persistence hunters. If you study about our metabolism, why we sweat in order to shed heat while we're running, and those animals are overheating, but we're cool as can be. So I mean, the human being is an amazing animal, and to evolve to be able to chase down these fat, in the megafauna too, stuff like that we used to hunt that are no longer around. But you can imagine the amount of fat on some of these megafauna, that we were hunting back when our brains were, reaching that peak size of evolution. So. But yeah, I like the most mature animals, and I think that our ancestors probably went for that if they could get it. But they're opportunistic; they'll take what they can get. So, and I am too in many respects. I know what I really like. If I can get it, I'd prefer it above everything else. I'll show you some of my fat.
Yeah, I want to see some, man. Do you got any tongue fat? Because the fat in the back of the tongue, that's something. And the cheek fat, it's another thing. A lot of people really like cheek fat, tongue fat. Tongue is actually really good. Lengua. I've never had tongue raw, but I've had it boiled, and it gets so nice and soft. Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Yeah,
I
so
love
this is
sheep
from
fat.
like a 6-year-old ewe, and this full of belly fat. I mean, this is just plumb full.
Oh,
Like
that's so
people
good.
say that people say you can't do like ketogenic and it's not sustainable because grass-fed animals are so lean. It's just because they don't let these animals get old enough and mature enough and fat enough
Yeah.
before they butcher them. So anyway,
Oh, and
I
people,
mean,
there you go. That's so beautiful, man. That's my favorite type of fat right there. I love sheep fat. That fat from around the belly.
all fat. See, a lot of times they'll throw the caul fat away. They'll get the suet fat around the kidneys, but the caul fat is surrounding the belly, and it's this type of fat that's
Thinner.
it's got it's the thinner that just encases the intestines.
Yep.
And this is what fuels the digestive tract of the sheep. This is the engine that runs these animals. It's fat.
Yeah, people think that fat is just like stored energy, but it's not. This is metabolically active tissue that it's secreting hormones, it's secreting compounds, it's eating, it's emptying. It's the fat is alive. So people talk about, oh, you got to eat organ meat. So if you're eating the fat, that is an organ. The fat, the skin is also an organ. I mean, it's not as simple as just, there's the flesh and then there's the organs. It's that fat is active and it's living and it's doing things metabolically in that animal. That's cool. What do you call that fat again in English? Because here they call it suet, but it's not the suet. You mentioned it's around the stomach.
The caul fat.
Caul fat.
They call it caul fat. Yeah, it's this the stringy fats that wrap around the intestines and the inner of the gut. So it's actually on the front of the belly. The suet's kind of in the back, but this caul fat surrounds the entire digestive tract. And in a healthy animal, there's a good thick layer of it, and that's what it uses to fuel itself. I mean, it's just the perfect source of fuel. These animals are pretty much run on keto too. They grow the bacteria in their gut that they use to produce the fatty acids to fuel their bodies. So it's
which that metabolically active fat tissue is involved in that process as well. So we're not just looking at isolated little things in there. But yeah, let's see now. What about your family, man? Is your kids probably not on an all raw primal diet like you are, but what kind of foods are your family eating, and how do they feel about their sheep eating dad?
Well, it's been a rocky road trying to figure out what to do because I've lost all interest in cooking personally. But the kids grew up with other family that's all they know is cooked foods, and so I have to make do with what I can. So all I can say is that I gear them more towards a Weston Price style diet. Home cooked foods, lots of extra fat. I'll make my own tallow and cover everything with butter and cooked vegetables and potatoes and lots of meat, but it's all, most of it's cooked. And my girls will eat raw. My younger kids, they like raw, but it's more of a here and there thing. It's nothing that they want. And then when they're with the relatives and when they're at school, they eat a lot of processed stuff. They eat a lot of stuff that's probably GMO, a lot of stuff with a lot of candy and sugar. But I try to balance it off when I have them. I had joint custody for a while, and now actually got full custody, so I have more liberty to work on their diets, and I've been gearing more towards the Weston Price thing.
Nice. And what about like grains? You ever do, Weston Price Foundation? They talk a lot about properly preparing grains and stuff. You give them any of that stuff, or is it just fruits and vegetables and other plant foods?
Uh, yeah, I don't, like I said, I have no personal interest in it. It's
Yeah.
really difficult for me to like, oh, I want to make this homemade, soaked grain bread.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that, but I do. I'll buy spelt bread. Some of the ancient grain breads that they sell, and I'll have some of that and make some toast and cover it with like I make bacon. So I'll cover everything with the drippings. So my kids like a lot of bacon, toast, and eggs. So just basic, standard, old-fashioned food that I think my ancestors grew up eating. And believe it or not, they didn't do too bad on it. Before all the French stuff came in, they were eating basic home cooked meals, but using fat drippings instead of vegetable oil. There's simple things like that. I think that anybody can do, even if kids won't go for all out raw carnivore. I don't. And I don't expect them to or blame them, because the society they live in, it's not feasible right now.
Yeah. That's cool. So they eat the meats, but they eat the sweets sometimes too. You can't always control everything. I'll get my kids. They really like. Sometimes we'll get them some cake or something. They like this carrot cake a friend of ours makes in town. They always ask for it. We'll get it for them. And it doesn't seem like there's a negative consequence to every once in a while having some of the off-plan stuff. But so you mentioned like butter and stuff like that. Do you ever eat butter yourself?
I've tried. I did various experiments, starting early into this diet, where I'd melt a little regular butter in with coconut butter, and like use it for dipping sauces for my meats, my lean meats, just to add extra fat to it.
Nice.
And I like a little bit of it, but it's the same thing with milk and cheese and other dairy. There's a certain threshold amount. If I eat too much of it, it just doesn't seem to work well with my digestion. But I use it for the kids, and they cover everything in it, and they seem to thrive. And they're resilient, and I think people in general are resilient if they're not damaged. So at a young enough age, I started giving them enough nutrient variety, and so even if they eat the sweets, even if they go over to grandma's and have that cake, and go to school and have their cupcakes and sweet treats, they have a few cavities, but other than that, they're real healthy and they're real happy. So I'm not too gung-ho about it. I'm not too dogmatic. I can't be in order to keep sanity. Well,
oh yeah, you gotta keep the balance over there in the home too. And you can't always control what the kids like. Can't always control what the kids want. It's gotta. To me, it's like we just want to give them a solid foundation. We keep around the foods that we want them to eat, and we can't control everything. So it's it can be a battle sometimes. But how cool that
there's something else about it. Like, what's that?
I'm just listening, man. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying that there's a lot more than just what they eat. I mean, there's how much they eat, when they eat. This idea that kids should be prescribed breakfast, a mid-morning snack, lunch, late afternoon snack, dinner. Like they have to eat 5 times a day. And what I've noticed is like all these little sweet snacks they'll give them like after school or during school ruins their appetite, where they won't. I'll make a wonderful, what I think a well-balanced meal, but they just had a snack 2 hours before and they could care less. They'll pick at it. And then like right before bed, they'll want some other snack because they didn't eat their dinner. But what I found works out really well is maybe 2 meals a day and a little snack instead of, this, 5 times a day. If they're hungry enough, they're more apt to finish their dinner instead of, just picking at it and then wanting dessert 3 hours later. So like there's different things that I've noticed that seems to work to gear them towards, instead of that carb, looking for the carbs. And they do that a lot too. They want a snack, they want a carb, and oh no, at dinner time's in an hour, you can wait. And that works immensely. And I think that this childhood obesity and all this, these kids with attention problems, and I think they're chasing that carb dragon. and that if you would just intermittently fast them, I'm not talking about starve your kids. I'm talking about, okay, maybe they don't have to eat up at the crack of dawn as soon as they get up at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Maybe let them run around a few hours.
Yeah.
And then when they truly get hungry, work up an appetite, you set a good meal in front of them, and then they'll be less likely to pick at it and complain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's can do.
Yeah, with
Like
my
even
wife, with our kids, they'd have a similar situation. It's usually 2 meals a day, like two substantial meals that contain animal foods, and they have, they'll have fruit around. And if they want some fruit, they'll feast on some fruit. It's like they'll ask us, "Hey, could we have some watermelon?" So we'll cut up a bunch of watermelon. They'll feast on it, and that's kind of like their snack. But in between that, they're just playing. They're running around, and you could tell sometimes when they're hungry too. And like our daughter's 7, our boy is 2.5. No, he's almost 3 now. Our boy's about 3, and you could tell like there comes a time when they start picking at each other a little bit, trying to push each other's buttons, and it's like, okay, maybe it's time to eat now, because you could see the energy kind of just flowing in a certain direction. Then they get some food in, and they're good. But yeah, man, this constantly feeding kids.
They get Yeah, no, they get hangry, but it's hard to say because there's mothers, especially with the best of intentions. Oh, they're hungry, and like you can see like these little babies that are always being put food in their face because whenever they get fussy, it's just here, have some applesauce, and you see where this goes.
Yeah. It's
Or
like a
have
drug.
a little bit of formula, have some, yeah, they get hooked early.
Yeah, it becomes like a drug, man. Well, it's crazy because then parents, they get pushed to using pharmaceutical drugs just like they use food, right? It's like, the kid's not listening so well in school. Well, let's get them on some speed. Let's put them on Adderall. Let's put them on some pharmaceutical drugs. And it's just, it's a sad reality that a lot of kids are being drugged, not only with pharmaceuticals, but with the sugar, with the food, with all this junk. And but it's cool. It's we're all about eat meat, make families here. We're all about promoting, raising good, healthy families, raising good, healthy children who understand the solid foundation of nutrition is one of the most important things to teach a kid. I think it's really important that kids understand how to feed themselves, learn how to nourish themselves, and learn what is food. So yeah, man, thanks for sharing on that. Another question I got is, what about like fish, seafood, shellfish? Do you ever do that? Even eggs?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've raised chickens. I'll do some eggs. Drink a couple every now and then, and it's a lot to do with appetite and what I feel like. And every now and then I will get a craving for seafood, and something to do with the oceanic minerals. Maybe I need more magnesium and selenium than what the land animals are offering. But yeah, I'll eat a little bit of fish, raw fish, and even a shellfish if I can get good oysters. It's kind of hard to get this far inland. Really fresh, really good seafood. So. It's more of an occasional treat, but whenever I do travel to areas like, I went to southern France and had some of this bonita tuna, like this little teeny tunas. They're like this big, but they're
nice.
fat.
Yes.
It was like the most delicious thing I've ever had.
Yeah.
It's like absolutely amazing. Like they're a delicacy. So like I know I'll have a craving for it, but where I'm at, it's just hard to get. So I'll go to the store and get some mackerel. Like mackerel's usually a fairly, safe go. You can get some mackerel about anywhere, or some sardines every now and then. So I just try not to go too much with it, because you go to these fish markets and where I'm at, you just spend a fortune, $20 a some pound on some of this ocean wild caught fish. It's just almost outrageous. So I'm all for advocating, use what you have available in your local areas. And I wouldn't be opposed to eating other foods like, frogs and turtles and other stuff you can forage for. It's just where I got it now. I'm so spoiled on my fat sheep. I just don't feel I don't feel desperate enough to go out and experiment like I used to. But there was lean times, I'd try more.
How long will that fat last you? That fat that you showed us in the Pyrex container there. How long will that last?
Probably about 3 weeks. Depends, because I have other fattier cuts and what I mix it with. But I'll put out a portion, like a good hand-sized portion, about every day. On top of my cuts of meat. So I'll cut that up and eat that aside, and I ate a little bit of fat like that with every meal.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta have it. I feel better with it. Like
Yeah.
over the years, I've been able to actually do better with less fat for periods of time. And I think that, once your body becomes more adapted, to running on fat and protein, you get more efficient with, burning protein. So you don't have to worry too much about protein overload.
Yeah.
But still, there's a certain base level of fat that I feel I need to have. So I always try to keep some around.
So it's more like a keto approach, more like a keto carnivore approach. You're focusing on the fat, and that helps you, just kind of stay balanced and stay energized, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the fat, and I can always source out other leaner, proteins. But yeah, getting the source of fat just seems crucial, in order for me to feel optimal and function.
Right on. All right. Well, all right, man. Let's wrap this up. I think we're gonna keep it under 2 hours this time. Let's do a quick rapid fire. I like to do this every once in a while. Let's do some word association. So I'll throw out a word, and you just throw me out a quick answer. It could be one word. It could be a sentence. But yeah. So we'll start with plant-based.
Yesterday's news.
Carbs.
Healthy in moderation.
Fat.
Manna from heaven.
Rotten.
Delicious.
Family.
Sacred.
Boomers.
No comment.
Gen Z.
Who?
Gen Z.
Oh, Gen Z.
Zoomers, they're called also.
Oh. I pray for them every day.
There you go. Millennial.
I'm glad I'm not a millennial.
Dude, I think we are millennials. I'm 32 and I'm a millennial. And you're 36. You got to be a millennial, man.
I'm at the cusp. They say like the first couple years, like the late, the early 1980s, we're not quite millennials, so we don't count.
You don't count? All right. Well, I'm a millennial. Damn it. I'm gonna try to drag you into the filth with me. All right, liver.
It's good. How do you encapsulate what the liver does into one word? It's like the most amazing. You know how many hundreds of biological functions? It's the quintessential organ. It does so much for us.
There you go. That was the most wordy answer. Yeah, there you go. What about, all right.
I can't encapsulate what the liver does. It's
Vice.
Vice is in magazine. Vice is in sin.
I don't know, just Vice.
Or we.
I know you had a history with Vice magazine, but it's an interesting word, Vice.
Feels like something that just takes a hold of you and just won't let go.
I guess that could be both Vice the magazine or the intestines.
Yeah. Intestines. The driving force of our biological being.
I thought you were
starts in the gut.
I thought you were gonna say smoothie. All right.
Oh yeah.
All right, man. So Derek Nance, hey, I got a question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm here. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask. You mentioned you've got a local news story coming out soon. Is that gonna be on YouTube or is that just gonna be on television?
It's going to be on network TV here in Kentucky, but I can send you a link. And the lady said that it was going to be really good, so I'll send it out. And, yeah, it keeps getting more interesting. I could tell you on the 6th, there's this documentary crew, or it's a documentary from Amsterdam. Like they're filming like different people, and it's along the lines of addiction and vice. It's not all addictions are unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So basically they're claiming I have a meat addiction, which I guess technically they do.
Yeah, all humans have a meat addiction, right? Everyone's got a food addiction or a meat addiction.
But I mean, we are flesh. We're addicted to ourselves. But
That sounds like a
yeah, so
80s song or something. It sounds like an 80s love song. We're all flesh. We're addicted to ourselves. It's like an Enya song or something. Um, so yeah, man, you got
but yeah,
more.
there's a lot
You
of
got
stuff
you got more
coming
of this
up. So
media stuff coming, right? Like you got the what you mentioned, a German documentary. You got a local film crew that you filmed a local piece with. You were just on, oh shoot, I keep forgetting the name of that. Was it Barcroft? You were just on the Barcroft YouTube channel.
part
So, is there anywhere else that people can find you? Are you gonna, I know you get a lot of requests. People are like, Derek, make some damn YouTube videos, man. People are looking for some more Derek Nance. Will they be able to find you anywhere else? Or are we gonna have to wait for another Primal Edge Health exclusive here?
yeah, you probably have to wait. Uh, yeah, my time's limited. I really don't have time for all my other interviews, but I'm just making time because I'm passionate and I like like getting the word out. But for now, yeah, I'm probably going to go dark for a few weeks and just keep doing what I'm doing, and then just wait for the right call. I'm open for offers if anybody wants to do podcast or chat. Every now and then I can return a message to somebody. I've had people contact me from the old Primal Edge
Hmm.
shows that we did a few months back. And
Yeah.
this one woman was transitioned while she was pregnant, and was just curious about what to do because she doesn't know what to do from transitioning from a vegetarian to a carnivore diet right in the middle of having a baby. And
Yeah.
it's hard to know what to do with stories like that because who am I to give such advice? But I speak from my experience and I try to help people when I can. So it's been heartening. There's a lot of people from all over the world that have been contacting me. People from South America, Australia, just all over the place where they get snippets of my articles or my media stuff. And so I don't know. I think it encourages me to keep going. So I'm gonna keep going and see where this takes me because there's none telling.
Yeah, well, we're all excited to go along for the ride with you because you've been a valuable resource to people online. You've been sharing your experiences for a long time, so I think it's pretty cool that you're dropping knowledge constantly, that you're helping people out, and 10 years raw carnivore. You're not trying to pretend like you invented the diet. You're not trying to act like you're high and mighty better than everyone else. I just the down to earth attitude, the willingness to share and to help, and I mean, you and I have talked a lot about this, both on and off air, but your understanding of kind of bigger picture issues, and you really bring in kind of like a good optic to the carnivore movement, even though what you're talking about, some of the things that you're doing might freak some people out. You talk about it in such a calm, collected, and kind way, and you share in such an open way. I love it. I mean, Jessica and I were just cracking up laughing at the video with what's it called, with Barcroft TV. I mean, you brought them out in your backyard. You showed them your maggot farm. It's just, I love it, man. You're making meat great again up there in the U.S. and we appreciate it, man. We appreciate you bringing awareness to this. We appreciate the humility that you present your information with, and I appreciate you coming on here and talking with me so many times, man. So, Derek Nance, legend in his a legend in the world of carnivory, and and a legend here on the Primal Edge Health Stream. Thanks a lot for coming on, man, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. If you got any last words, you can throw it out there. If you got anywhere where people can find you, go ahead and throw it out.
No, I'm going to hide out for a while. I'm not going to be going to try to drop off the radar for the next month while I do a bunch of other work. But yeah, I just like to say that I appreciate you giving the opportunity to get some of what I've learned out, and I still don't feel like I know enough to call myself an authority per se. But I do want to spend the next few years really refining what I do, experimenting a little further, and just refining what I do and what I know to the point where I might be able to do more, my own YouTube videos and new documentaries to where I can get to a greater audience, what I've learned over the course of the last few years. So I just appreciate the opportunity to get my message out, and I'll speak to you again in the future if I have anything worthwhile saying. I'm I'm sure there's a lot we could still talk about. But
Yeah, man, we were just broaching the surface on all this stuff. I mean, I could talk to you for hours about this. I wish some of these guys that are making some of these films, like Food Lies. I talked to that guy. I had him on the stream a long time ago. He hasn't talked to me since. But I wish some of these people would go and talk to you. Right? Everyone seems so focused on getting the next, whoever's the next hot flavor on YouTube, and but there are some really cool people out there, especially like Derek Nance, who lay low, but who've been doing this for a long time and like spreading good information. So, I'd encourage anybody, if you're making, documentary films about carnivory, if you're looking into spreading the word on this, talk to Derek. He's a good dude. He knows a lot. And I think he knows heck of a lot more than he's letting on. He's a 10-year vet, and Derek, I appreciate you coming on, man. Have a great day, everybody out there. You can find more at primaledgehealth.com. Check out the throw it out there one more time. Check out the Carnivore Cookbook for people, zero carb recipes for people who really love animals. It's all animal foods. We actually teach you how to make high meat in there, which is incredibly simple recipe. It requires meat, a jar, and a refrigerator and a knife, maybe a cutting board if you want to be sanitary there. But yeah, check out the Carnivore Cookbook for people who really love animals, available at primaledgehealth.com. We're doing our next Keto and Carnivore Collective. Our community coaching is starting on Monday. So you got a few days left to sign up for that. It's our group coaching. We use a live Discord server. There's 2 interactive live voice chats per week. One of those is a lesson, and then we do a little Q&A at the end of the lesson. And the other one's just Q&A. So we're here to help you to formulate your diet, to dial it in so that you can do it sustainably long term. So whether that's a ketogenic diet or a carnivorous diet, we like to teach a more animal-heavy keto diet. And if you're doing a carnivorous diet, the way we like to do it is more of a ketogenic approach. So check out the Keto and Carnivore Collective. We're starting on Monday. You could sign up. There's a link in the description. Another shout out to to one of the sponsors, Ancestral Supplements for grass-fed organ capsules. If you're not willing to go all the way, if you're not going to be making the intestine smoothies and the high liver, you can include some organs in your diet in the dried form in capsules if you just can't stomach those organs or if you mentally can't get there. Check out Ancestral Supplements at ancestralsupplements.com, and we'll see you guys next time.